Hi, my name is David Knox. I have MSA, and we're going to go 3D here with the brain. Not all neurodegenerative diseases are the same, where they affect and what they look like. An example of that would be there's a lot of research that says, it's just not alpha-synuclein protein that's the issue for Parkinson's, MSA, dementia Lewy bodies, and things like that. But it's different strands and strains of alpha-synuclein protein. They're seeing different types of it at the beginning, like the predominant when it starts, and then at the end, it kind of looks the same. So when it starts, these strains are mutating into something else. They look different, but at the end, when you got your disease, you're full on, they tend to look the same. So they don't know if it's just the beginning of the diseases that start in different, the synuclein protein starting in different parts of the brain that causes it to look different, but ultimately mutates back to the same form. But they're thinking that, you can't treat all of these the same way, because remember, they still don't understand a lot of these diseases, why they start and how they start. They just know some effects and they know where to look and how to look. So people with persons that have Parkinson's disease, right? They are affected in the substantia nigra. So if you look at it from this view, it's right here. These little pieces right in the dead center of the brain for the most part. And if you wanted to bring this out, not that helps out too much, but that's what goes wrong with Parkinson's, alpha-synuclein in that area. It looks very different than other diseases. So, that's quite different than other diseases that don't start off there. Parkinson's, that area, substantia nigra, is mainly motor control. Parkinson's persons with Parkinson's are still very bright. They're alert. You can talk to them in conversations. Now, I understand there's issues with movement control, but they don't seem like they've lost it. It's still there. They just have issues with a lot of tremors and shaking and masking the face and things like that. That's what controls a lot of that for them. Okay. And then you get dementia with Lewy bodies, DLB, dementia with Lewy bodies, which, the name on here is not going to pop up exactly, but the cerebral cortexes, right? They call it the neocortex, but basically the big parts of the brain, the hemisphere, that's on both sides. That's actually, there you go, look from outside. That's what persons with dementia with Lewy bodies is affected by. Alpha-synuclein protein building up deposits in there on both sides of the brain. And that cortex of the brain controls language, sensory perception, spatial reasoning, motor commands, complex information integration, comparing and contrasting things, decision making, motivation, creativity, long-term memory. When you see persons with dementia with Lewy bodies, they seem lost. That's a lot of brain. It does a lot of things for the body. So when you realize how much it actually does, it makes sense why persons with dementia and dementia with Lewy bodies, dementia with Lewy bodies is not dementia. Just stay with me here, but that's why those persons seem like they're in space. They seem lost mentally. It's a lot of that brain and processing power has been taken away. Okay, now MSA, to make this easy, is affected in the caudate nucleus, basically. So the caudate nucleus consists of two things. So one is the caudate, which is right there. When you're getting the DAT scans and the MRIs, that's one of the two things they're looking at. They're looking for atrophy and radio tracer activity in the caudate and putamen. Well, here goes your caudate, okay? And then the putamen is just right inside of that. Which that's what's not working on my brain. It's right on the inside. So you can still see the same levels, the C shape of the caudate and the putamen on the inside. Okay, so everything that's really in that red in the middle, that's what people with MSA have an issue with. Depending which of those or both is affected is how many symptoms and how bad it's going to get. Eventually, it will affect both of them. But there has been where just putamen and no caudate and no putamen. So, I don't have to tell you, but MSA, that part of the brain, right? That part of the brain controls quite a few things, but what they don't tell you, or what you usually overread a little bit, right? What we overlook, because the test is for putting them in collate. But, well, why are they doing MRIs then? Well, they're looking for atrophy in the brain, but they're also looking for atrophy in a couple other areas. So if you go to the very back, people with msa-p, that's generally where it comes from, right here. MSA Parkinsonisms. But people with msa-c, cerebellar, it's the cerebellum. The cerebellum controls an awful lot of things. Okay, helps improve motor skills by detecting areas of movements and making minute adjustments to the next movement. I told you, my feet and hands, they don't go where they're supposed to. Supposed to, but they don't, right? The procedural memories of learned motor skills can persist even when memories events are disrupted by damage to the hippocampus. There's a lot of movement here. Well, what they also don't tell you on top of that, right? So msa-p is generally the interior of the brain, put them in nucleus caudate. msa-c is the cerebellum area in the very back, the back that's sticking out. And then, if it's even worse, you get down to the brainstem, right? Mainly overlooked. They're looking for on MRIs and CTs, they're looking for lesions and atrophy back here on the brainstem. MSA, unlike a lot of other things, involves autonomic. And that's because you put them in your nucleus caudate and the cerebellum, the signals are not going through to the brainstem properly. They're being disrupted, they're not going at all, which causes autonomic failure eventually, right? It causes the symptoms. Bladders, kidneys, hearts, hypostatic or hypotension, orthostatic hypotension. It's the transition from brain to spinal cord. Everybody thinks that signals go from brain and they go straight to your hands. No, they got to be transferred off to the spinal cord, and the spinal cord transfers them off to nerve endings to the muscle, to your hands. It's a multi-step process. And the brainstem is mainly overlooked. It's one of the only diseases besides the RE rapid eye movement disorder that affects this part of the spinal cord and the brain together. Rapid eye movement disorder, right, REM behavior disorder, is only in the spinal cord. I didn't know that until just recently. RBD, REM, rapid eye behavior disorder, comes from the spinal cord. The signals from the brain are not going to the spinal cord forward. Right? So they tell you if you have RBD, it's a precursor to Parkinson's and MSA, because you're already having issues with the spinal cord sending signals through there to the right organs, the right autonomic parts of the body, motors, muscles, legs, all that stuff. So it makes sense that this would be one of the first areas you see an issue with, the transferring of signals to the rest of the body, which is done through the spinal cord, right? Very interesting. And the pure autonomic failure is not very understood. They believe it has a lot to do with the sympathetic ganglia, which is, they don't understand it completely. Like the basal ganglia, is in the same area as MSA. But certain parts of the brain are only affected by autonomic. Just because you hit, like, Pudeman is doing one thing to me, and cerebellum is doing the other, and nucleus caudate will add in everything else. But pure autonomic failure is not fatal. It's bad. I mean, they live for 20 or more years. Common death of these individuals is primarily Ebola or recurrent infection, right, from all the medical treatments and things like that. So, these diseases happen in many different parts. So RBD is in the brainstem, MSA is in 3 parts technically of the brain. Dementia Lewy bodies is in the entire cortex up above, what we actually think of as a brain, left and right lobes. And the Parkinson's is on the very interior, way, way, way down. I'm not going to look at it again, but way down here. Those very small substantia nigris. So, we do have overlapping symptoms, and a lot of that has to do with the signals from the brain. If we have brain issues or abnormalities, they're not filtering down through the brainstem very well. That's the problem. Everything in our brain, whether it affects the cerebellum, the middle, the outside, the lower, the top, they all got to filter through the brainstem. And for the record, there's this really nice picture. I don't know if I copied it, but if you go on and look at the brainstem, it will show you on each part of the brain where the brain, the cells, the nerve endings, and go through on the spinal cord. Exactly where it goes. So if you slice them, don't do it. If you were to slice the spinal cord in half, you'd see the holes. You'd see where the nerve endings and fibers and things go through. They all have a place. So when we start having issues, most of us, it's because the signals are degrading, going from brain to spinal cord. And the question is then, what part of the brain is starting it? Because we're not transferring the signals. They're not going from A to B or A, B to C to our hands and limbs. They're getting cut out and missed. So, it's interesting looking at pictures of the brain and where it actually starts off with. There's also some really nice pictures. You can copy and paste things and a lot of searching, but autonomic nervous, you got the parasympathetic, you got the sympathetic, what it controls, right? The parts of the brain, they control different parts of your central nervous system, right? I mean, parasympathetic controls, pupil, salivation, airways, heart rate, stomach digestion, intestines, right? And then you get to the other part, right? It's like the opposite, right? Things go up, things go down, right? Heart rate slows, heart rate increases. Stomach inhibits digestion, stomach digests. It's yes or no. And when we've got parts of this brain that's falling apart, some of this stops working because the transfer of the signal in the spinal cord does not go through. It gets broken up, right? And this is part of the alpha-synuclein parts of the brain where not all these diseases are the same. So, it's important that we understand, we're all in this together, but these diseases start in different parts of the brain and end somewhere else. What we know is how, like Parkinson's and msa, how can we have very similar alpha-synuclein protein iron deposit buildups in the brain, but the symptoms are different because they're affecting different parts of the central nervous system that send signals, causing the different symptoms that we have and different failures medically. So, very interesting to see these things. The research that they're doing, still trying to figure it out. You thought they have it figured out. Not really, right? We have some very good guesses, but, I just thought this would be a good video to show a 3D model of the differences in the brains from people, right? And again, it's very informative that we have this technology nowadays to show the different parts and where it starts, where it ends. And eventually, unfortunately, we all have to, filter through the spinal cord. Dementia Lewy bodies doesn't have to. It's really in the brain where it stays. It doesn't really progress through anywhere else outside the brain. It doesn't go down to the spinal cord, affect it. But, everything up here goes to waste. So, it's one of those darn if I do and darn if I don't diseases. But still, though, if you enjoyed it, I appreciate it. And I thank you guys for watching. And keep the comments coming and questions. I enjoy helping out as much as I can. And, these visualizations we have nowadays are absolutely phenomenal. Just absolutely great. So if you're interested in anything else, let me know and I'll definitely help out. Until then, I'll see you shortly. Bye.